Yeah, so I suggest we begin. So, dear participants, welcome to this year's Athena World Intellectual Property Day, which is titled Understanding the Importance of IP in the Innovation Ecosystem. Before we begin, I would kindly remind you that this event is being recorded. If possible, I would kindly ask if you could turn on your cameras and use the chat option if you wish to ask a question. So feel free to use this option as well. Without further ado, I would like to give the word to our professor, Dr. Dejan Korošak, Vice Rector for Science and Research at the University of Maribor, to kick off this event with some introductory words. Please, Professor Korošak, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dorothea, for the intro and the starting of the event. Hello, everyone. It's my great pleasure and honor to be able to greet you on behalf of University of Maribor on Athena's World Intellectual Property Day 2023. So the main purpose of this event is to observe the World Intellectual Property Day, celebrated each year on 26th of April. And its main purpose is to raise awareness of how patents, copyright, trademarks, designs impact the daily life, and to celebrate creativity and the contribution made by creators and innovators. This year, the event focuses on intellectual property and its role in the innovation ecosystem. The purpose of the event here today is to promote the ATHENA European University Alliance and the Enterprise Europe Network project, and the highlight of importance of IP among our target audiences, since one of the key aspects of the projects, and both of them actually, is to contribute to accelerating the transition of knowledge to innovative environments. So for the university, its third mission, and targeting social challenges, while establishing strong cooperation between academia and the business sector. I would like to add also one additional aspect as regard with environment, innovation ecosystems, and that is that they are and should be an open ones, so that they adhere to the rules, or let's say the ideas of open science movement and principles, but the crossing between open science, open innovation, and intellectual property are sometimes in the opposite roles. So I think it's the important question, and I hope you will have the opportunity to say a few words about that today, is also how to treat properly intellectual property in these open systems, either in science or open innovation. So how we share and at the same time protect our intellectual property. This, if you would have some pointers later on that, would be very beneficial also for us as a university, because we are now heavily involved in introducing and implementing the principles of open science into our also legal documents and internal rules. So I would be very grateful if some good ideas would come out of this meeting today. Not taking too much of your time in the beginning, I'm really glad that this event is happening, that the University of Maribor is hosting it, and I wish you a very nice day and lots of fruitful discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Korošak, for your introductory words and for starting us off. Next, I would kindly invite our first guest speaker today, Mr. Jakub Sadar, CEO of OPS Technologies, a student-led startup producing a micropowder paste made of bovine horn parts for steel polishing. Mr. Sadar will give us insight into the journey of OPS Technologies and provide us with an industry perspective on the subject of IP in the innovation ecosystem. Mr. Sadar, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me just put up the slideshow. Uh, can everybody see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Do you want to see the PowerPoint, right? Yeah, okay. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. My name is Jakub Sadar, and I'm a student of mechatronics at the University of Maribor. But I'm also a young inventor who took my innovation to the world a few years ago. I'm very sure that you're very interested in the story of how OPS was created. And let me assure you, it's a very interesting story. But it all started one day when I borrowed my father's watch and I immediately scratched it. I didn't know what to do, so I started rubbing it. First with my hand, then with my finger, and finally with my fingernail. And when I rubbed it with my fingernail, I noticed that the small scratch was slowly disappearing. And that gave me an idea. Well, an extraordinary idea. That the horn-like matter on my nail helped to reduce the damage on my father's watch. So I researched further, coming up with a great solution that is both financially viable and ecologically friendly. The main feature of OPS is animal horn, more specifically beef horns. There are currently 1.4 billion cattle registered in the world. Only in Slovenia 480,000. So the materials that can be used for our product are readily available. Well, I should finish here, but since I have protected my innovation with the Intellectual Property Office of the Republic of Slovenia, I can say a little bit more. I made a polishing paste which is called OPS, Organic Polishing Structure, and it's designed for polishing special tool steels. Instead of using expensive diamond pastes, I use horn parts of bone animals, which is a waste product in the butchery industry. And then I first won the competition organized by JAS Slovenia or GA Slovenia under the umbrella of GA Europe, and then qualified for the European competition, which was that year held in Lithuania. In highly competitive field, I finished at the top 5 in the area of innovation and circular economy. It seems that I became so well known that I was invited to Expo in Dubai, where I presented my innovation as the youngest participant in the delegation of advanced materials and technical problems for solving future factories, in front of a bunch of politicians and entrepreneurs. The company's entrepreneurial mindset is successfully described in its OPS polishing paste product. Its more emphasized values are creativity, innovation, and eco-friendly manufacturing, which all provide a highly competitive low market prices. OPS's main feature is engaged in circular economy via the use of bone horn. Competitive pastes are made out from lab-made diamonds, making it a costly solution for production point onwards. My success was also discovered by the EIT, European Institute of Innovation and Technology, who interviewed me, and then I became an EIT alumni member. I attended interesting events and conferences organized by the EIT to meet and share experience with young innovators and entrepreneurs. I also became a GA alumni member and a member of Australian Slovenian Chamber of Commerce. My innovation and my entrepreneurial spirit were recognized by the European Commissioner Maria Gabriel, who invited me to the Brussels in October last year as the only representative from Slovenia. At the European Commission headquarters, we had a lovely debate on the role of young people in helping to shape innovation and research in the universities. Some of the topics discussion included: what are young people's expectations of the legacy of the European Year of Youth? How to promote youth engagement and participants in European initiatives? What are young people's ideas and visions for STEM educations, science and innovation at school, and encouraging more girls to participate in those fields? Those were just some topics and discussions with the Commissioner at EU headquarters in Brussels. The aim of our debate was to make European programs aimed at young people even more successful. The Commissioner also wanted to hear our views and suggestions. I, myself, asked the Commissioner questions on the subject of young innovators, where and how a young innovator can turn for encouragement, advice, or even a concrete help. I also raised a very important issue of the protection of young innovators' innovation by the European or Global Intellectual Property Office. It's extremely important to protect your innovation with the office. We know that today's digital age information travels much faster than it used to, and it can happen very quickly that someone else borrows our innovation. That's why I decided, before my innovation went out into the world, to protect it. However, the cost and fees for protecting such patent as mine at the European Patent Office are extremely high. We young people who are just entering the world of entrepreneurship cannot afford such numbers. We also discussed patent protection and the high cost of its protection, as well as the United European Patent System at the conference in Ljubljana last year. I advise all young people who decide to embark on the entrepreneurial path to believe in your invention and work hard to reach the goal. And so, as my idol Richard Branson once said, starting your business is not just a job, it's a way of life. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sadar, for sharing your inspiring story and providing us with a fresh perspective from a younger generation on why is it important to protect your IP when doing business and innovating. Up next, we have our next guest speaker lined up. I would kindly invite Dr. Eugene Sweeney of Iambic Innovation to give us keynote speech titled Thinking Innovation is Thinking IP. Dr. Eugene Sweeney has over 40 years professional experience of innovation and intellectual asset management, particularly the commercial exploitation of research and early-stage technologies. He founded Iambic Innovation in 2000, which provides services, support and training related to innovation and the management, protection and exploitation of IP and research results. Dr. Sweeney, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm just trying to share my PowerPoint presentation, but I don't seem to see it. So do you see it now?
Yes, we do. No.
The
Yes.
Presentation, yeah. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. The topic here is thinking innovation, thinking IP, and I changed that slightly to thinking IPR, because I think intellectual property is really probably our most undervalued asset. Often those who create the IP, the researchers, and other people who come up with creative ideas fail to recognize what it is they've got. Even if they do recognize it, they often fail to nurture it, to look after it, to protect it, and to extract value from it. And even if they do that, they often fail to think about how to use it strategically. And that's a shame, really, because the IP, the intellectual property, is actually key to innovation. It's key to a company's competitiveness, and it's key to a company's growth. So what do we mean actually by innovation? It's a word that's bandied about quite a lot, and there are many different definitions. Some people think of innovation as a process. Some think of it as an end result. Some think of it as being commercial or financial. Well, after about 10 years of discussion, we now have a formal definition. You can look it up in ISO 56000. That document is available free of charge. published in February 2020, and it's a definition that's agreed by now over 62 countries, people like the OECD, WIPO, EPO, and so on. So I'm not going to go into the details of the definition, just the highlights. So this is it. This is now the agreed definition. It's a new or changed entity realizing or distributing value. Nice and simple, but each word has a meaning. Entity, for example, means an innovation is an outcome now. It's an innovation, it's not a process. The word entity is used because it doesn't have to be a physical product. It can be a new idea, a new way of doing things, a new policy, anything really. But whatever it is, this idea of yours has to go through this process supported by the innovation ecosystem to become something that is used. And when it's used, it realizes or redistributes some value, and value means benefit. It doesn't have to be financial. So it can be an environmental benefit or societal benefit. The point I'm trying to make here is that an invention is not an innovation. Very often when you speak to researchers and you ask them, well, what's the innovation? They'll tell you what their invention is. And there are very many inventions out there which have not become innovations. Lots of good ideas which don't manage to get through this process. Some people call this the valley of death. But so there are many inventions. So think of an innovation as something that's being used. Then we look at intellectual property, IP and IPR. So intellectual property is what it says it is. It's intellectual, which means it's some creative product of the mind. And it can be many things. It can be a technical invention, it can be some software code or work of art, and so on, a design. And like physical property, intellectual property is an asset. That means you can trade it, you can buy it, you can sell it, you can give it away, you can use it as collateral against a loan, and so on. And it's really important because these are the key components in any innovations. They're the key components of any research project. It's where you start. It's the background intellectual property that you build your research on, and it's the outputs of your research, the results. And it's the key asset in any company. If you look at a company, there is always some sort of intangible or intellectual asset on which the company is based and which gives it its unique selling point. So we also need to think about other intangible assets, things like people who have know-how and knowledge, but also they have skills. For example, someone may be a great programmer or a great designer, and the company may have brand value. And if we look at a recent report published by Ocean Tomo, looking at the components of market value in the leading US publicly traded companies, you see a steady growth in the value of intangible assets, now representing probably over 90% of the component value of companies. So it's important. And today, products and services are really just bundles of IP. For example, like you can go and buy an ice cream if you want to. That's great, but you're probably more likely to buy something like this, which is an ice cream, but it's a little bit more than an ice cream. It's a bundle of IP. There's special things for making this wavy ice cream, the processes, apparatus, software to control it. There'll be functional designs for the equipment, aesthetic designs here on the box, and so on. Maybe there are some secret recipes, and the whole thing is supported by trademarks and brands. Now, IP is different from IPR. States around the world provide legal protection for intellectual property in the same way that it provides protection for physical property. And it's not only about patents. There are many different types of legal protection for intellectual property, depending on the type of property. Patents, for example, are only applicable for technical inventions in most of the world. Copyright will protect software code and written works. design right, protect designs, and very important today are database rights, as we're in this era of artificial intelligence, and so on. There's a whole range of different types of rights. Now, some of these rights come into existence automatically, like copyright or database rights, and some need to be registered, such as patents or utility models or trademarks, and some designs. Some are more expensive than others. As mentioned by Jakob earlier, patents can be quite expensive. But just as something like copyright or database right comes into existence automatically, it doesn't mean you don't have to do anything, because you still need to keep good evidence of date of creation and who contributed. And this is all part of good research practice. Again, so it's something that researchers and other people designing things need to be aware of. Now, there are some types of intellectual asset for which there is no formal intellectual property right. And I'm talking here about knowledge, know-how, skills that people have, for example. But you can protect these using contractual agreements such as confidentiality agreements, employment contracts, and so on. And of course, even if there is a legal right available to protect your technical invention, for example, you may decide that the protection is quite weak, maybe easy to get around. So as long as it can't be reverse engineered, you may decide to keep it secret. And trade secrets are a legitimate form of protection for intellectual property, and there's a legal framework harmonized in Europe surrounding trade secrets, so don't discount that. And of course, these are time-limited national rights. And just as we're talking about definitions, and to be a bit pedantic, you should think of intellectual property, and this is the formal definition in the ISO 56000. It's an intellectual property is an intellectual asset for which a legal right exists. So you often hear now people talking more about intellectual assets, which encompass the whole lot. But I think the question is, why do we have IP rights? And this is linked in some ways to the question we had in the introduction about open science. And the reason we have open science is essentially the same reason we have IP rights. There's no conflict there. They're both sort of siblings, like, except IP rights is the elder brother or sister. So essentially, states want to benefit society. And to do that, they realize that they need to encourage innovation and creativity. They also realize that innovations don't start from scratch. They're built on existing innovations. I mean, some innovations, of course, might start from scratch, especially if you're scratching your fingernail. So, but in general, they're built on something else. But they also need to avoid secrecy, because if I were an inventor and I come up with something and I spend lots of time and effort and money developing it, refining it, prototyping it, building the market, taking it to market, etc., I would be pretty disappointed if someone just came along and borrowed my idea for nothing. So I might have a tendency to secrecy. So the state have to overcome that. They also have to find a way to benefit inventors, to encourage them to disclose information. And that's essentially the deal of intellectual property rights. It's a legal right to prevent other people using your creation without your agreement, but for commercial purposes only, not for further research. And it's for a limited period. You have a limited monopoly. But you get this right in return for disclosing details about your invention. A patent, for example, has to include what's called an enabling disclosure, sufficient details for someone to replicate it. But that's disclosed in order that other people can build on it and develop new innovations. Now, that's essentially the same as the open science. The idea is to make the information available so other people can build on it, and therefore increase innovation capacity. But it doesn't mean that what you're disclosing is not protected. So who benefits? Benefits improves innovation capacity. The creator benefits because they can prevent unauthorized commercial use unless they come to an arrangement, which is usually financial. And very important now to get you across that valley of death, investors, collaborators, and I don't just mean investors like venture capitalists, I mean people who are putting in time, effort, maybe providing facilities, funders, for example, who want to, who are perhaps trying to encourage you with a proof of concept funding, or universities, they all will see having this limited monopoly beneficial in order to improve their return on investment. So you have to think of, don't confuse intellectual property with intellectual property rights. The property are the key assets, and you have to think of intellectual property rights or intellectual property protection as a legal tool that you can use to maybe support your commercial exploitation. And as I said, it's not just about intellectual property per se. You need to think broader than that. You have other intellectual assets, your know-how, ideas, and people, particularly important if you're supplying a service. You may rely on a key person who has certain skills. And of course, these can be protected in other ways. So the decision to protect your intellectual asset is a strategic commercial decision. So how would you use this strategically? You have some intellectual property. How can I think about using it, the protection strategically? You can think of it as a shield, as a defensive thing. Maybe you want to secure a bit of market share, stop people entering your territory, create barriers to entry, and maybe so to enhance your competitiveness. And this is very important if you're trying to persuade someone to invest in your idea. Again, not just money, but time as well, because they see this protection as enhancing their chances of return on investment. But your strategy may also be more proactive. You could use the IP maybe for generating new revenues, licensing it out, perhaps using it to develop a partnership. You know, you both have different pieces of the jigsaw, so it can be used in that way as well. But essentially, when you're planning, it starts with the question, are there commercial opportunities? Because if you remember, IP rights give you the right to stop people using your technology for commercial purposes. So if there are commercial opportunities, you need to consider whether protection would help support commercial exploitation. If so, what sort of protection, where do you want it protected, and so on. And the reasons you would want to do that is maybe because your exploitation strategy involves you having to raise investment. Maybe you need to form a company. Maybe you need to do a proof of concept fund. Maybe your strategy is just to keep a barrier around it to make sure no one else enters your territory. Or maybe your strategy is to seek licensees in different parts of the world. And then, of course, you ask the question, are the benefits greater than the costs? And Jakob mentioned this morning that the costs of patenting can be quite high, but there are also costs in other types of protection. But I would say you shouldn't think of it as a cost. This is something that often puts people off. You should think of it as an investment, not a cost. In the same way that you might think of investing in sales and marketing, you know, you're doing this. The reason you're investing in protection is in order to increase the chances of your organization being successful, whether you're a tech transfer office or whether you're a company. It's increasing the chances of what you're wanting to do. And if the equation works, then invest. And the other point I want to make here is that you can't just say, I've got a technical invention, I'm going to patent it. You have to consider, you know, assess the strength of the technology, the strength of the protection, the various options for protecting in the same line as when you're considering exploitation, because your protection, type of protection, depends on your exploitation strategy. So they all have to be considered together. If we just look at this in the innovation ecosystem, we have to go, from this new idea through to some innovation. First thing you do, of course, is assess the opportunities and the IP. And it has to go hand in hand with looking at the landscape. Have you got something unique? Are you going to tread on someone else's toes? So assessment involves IPR. When you think about the exploitation strategies, whether it's a joint venture, forming a company, licensing, and then moving on, how you're going to maintain your competitiveness, how you're going to stimulate growth, you have to think about IP because they're linked, closely linked. Whether you're going to use your IP rights defensively or proactively, whether you're going to license in or license out, and so on. So they're closely linked, and you have to do the two together. When you come to implement the strategy, you have to get across this valley of death. And it's a common problem in tech transfer or in any company startup. It's a job of convincing people. If I were able to convince someone at a very early stage that I've got a great idea for them to invest in, great. But in practice, they generally say, well, I'm not quite sure. You need to, show me a little bit more about it, prove that we can scale it up. So you inevitably have to sort of move down the scale. You have to sort of try and persuade people to help you prove the concept or prove the scale up or find licensees and convince them and so on. And that means you have to convince people to invest. At the early stages, maybe the government wants to give you a bit of a push and will help. So you have government support, you may have friends and families and so on. But you also have to convince people. You have to convince entrepreneurial managers perhaps to come and join you, people who are prepared to take a risk in a company. You have to involve specialists, licensing lawyers, patent IP attorneys, trademark attorneys. There are a lot of specialists involved in this ecosystem. And also there's a lot of support. So don't forget the support available from Enterprise Europe Network. The EIT has been mentioned already. And there are a lot of lots of support out there in that ecosystem. And of course, the European IP Helpdesk. So let me just, so the point I'm emphasizing here is that IP protection is integral in this whole journey. And it's because of the IP protection that provides the comfort to invest. It improves your chances of convincing the people who you need to get involved, whether they're funders or people you want to employ in your company or whatever, to participate. Let me just finish by giving you a little case study here to show how this idea turned into this innovation, which I'm sure you're all familiar with now, disposable contact lenses, and how IP was integral to that. Well, the technology was developed in Scotland. The inventors found a new way of manufacturing contact lenses. It wasn't that they had to be disposed daily because they disintegrated after a day. It's because they were so cheap to make that you could chuck it away after a day. Now, these inventors wanted to form a startup company, but they were unable to raise the investment in the early stages because essentially, as I said, this valley of death, the investors said, well, I'm not sure, scale up from lab to factory wasn't proven. So the company I used to work for, BTG, was an early stage investment company like a tech transfer organization, and they approached us. We felt there was an opportunity in there, and so we took over the IP and managed the IP, filed patents worldwide, invested in that, and we also tried to license it and failed for the same reason, so invested in building a pilot plant. And based on that pilot plant, the investors were able to raise money to create a startup. The company was called Award. And they were very successful, and the product was available, distributed through a national chemist, Boots the Chemist. But we licensed that to the startup exclusively for the UK only. Meanwhile, we continued to seek licensees in other territories, Australia, Japan, etc., around the world, and succeeded in licensing some. And in the US, Bausch & Lomb took a license. Again, there's a bit of a snowball effect taking this approach, because the success of the UK startup convinced some of the other licensees to take a license. So Bausch & Lomb took the US market, they were successful, and they ended up buying the original startup company Award, and were eventually granted an exclusive license and then assigned the IP. So everyone was happy. Bausch & Lomb were very happy because they got a nice new product. The inventors were very happy because they got an exit from their startup. Very pleased with that. And the early stage investor, we were very happy because we got a return on investment. But IPR was key to that success of that innovation. Without having strong IP protection, we wouldn't have invested in the early stage in taking it on and investing in the proof of scale up. Without IP protection, the venture capitalists wouldn't have invested in the startup. And without IP protection, we would not have been able to license the technology to other territories. Because if you haven't got the IP protected in those different parts of the world where you want to work, then you can't license anything. If it's freely available, then they can just have it. And just the other point on this case study is that the strategy of licensing, exclusive licensing in different territories, managed to quickly get the technology or the innovation to market without overstretching a startup company who wasn't really able to deal worldwide. And overall, everyone benefit. So just to conclude then, if you're going to be thinking about innovation, you really ought to be thinking about protecting it, but not always protecting it. Think strategically about protecting it. So thank you very much. Over to you, Dorothea.
Thank you.
How to stop sharing.
That's okay. It's okay. I've stopped it.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Sweeney, for a very insightful talk about why is it important to protect protect your IP when innovating. We will touch this topic further on. So yeah, let me just a minute. So let me introduce our next topic of business. So we will start off with a roundtable discussion with a Q&A session afterwards. And the title of the roundtable will be IP and its role in the innovation ecosystem. My name is Dorothea Novak. I work for the Technology Transfer Office at the University of Maribor, and I will be leading this panel, joined by 7 other panelists from different areas, different countries, from different experience. So without further ado, let me introduce and welcome our first guest, Michele Zubini from URISI. Michele holds a BA in International Law from Catholic University of Milan, Italy, and has an MA in Intellectual Property Law from University of Alicante, Spain. He has joined URISI as an IP innovation advisor and legal expert. So next we also have Dr. Sweeney, whom I introduced before. As stated before, he has a lot of professional experience in innovation and intellectual asset management. As stated, he founded Iambic Innovation, and which offers support and training related to innovation and the management, protection, and exploitation of IP and research results. Up next, we have Professor Dr. Jozef Györkös, a professor of informatics and media communication at the University of Maribor, at the Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. His research is concentrated on information, society, and media convergence. Between the years of 2008 and 2011, he was the State Secretary at the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Technology, and from 2014 and 2019, he served as the Director of the Slovenian Research Agency. Next, I welcome Ms. Vilma Purjene, the Director of the Knowledge and Technology Transfer Center at Vilnius Tech. She started her office from scratch in 2014 and has several years of experience in the field of innovation, IP management, patenting, commercialization, and startup creation. Next, I welcome Ms. Penelope Couture-Pellet. She's a regional delegate and IP legal expert for the French Intellectual Property Office. The INPI office is the only competent office in France to deliver patents, trademarks, and designs. Beside this mission, and among others, the French Intellectual Property Office assists innovative companies in their intellectual property strategy in accordance with their business model. In addition, it intervenes on all subjects, including software, know-how, and partnership relations as technology transfer. Next, I welcome Mr. Rafael Pedrosa. He's the coordinator of Startup Porto, which is the network of incubators of Polytechnic of Porto. And for the last 15 years, he has been responsible at the Polytechnic of Porto in entrepreneurship programs, technology transfer and valuation processes, industrial property, and funded projects, both national and European ones. Last but not least, I welcome my colleague, Ms. Nina Smerdou. Nina decided to practice law in the field of intellectual property when she was still studying at the same university where she's now working, so the University of Maribor. She collected her experience from respective fields at the Slovenian Intellectual Property Office, Knowledge Transfer Office at the University of Ljubljana, and now she's currently working at our office at the University of Maribor, where she offers legal support in IP to researchers. So now that we are all here gathered, we can begin. As stated before, this panel will focus on intellectual property and its role in the innovations ecosystem. Let me start off with a thought from Stephen Johnson, from science author and media theorist, who stated, "If you look at history, innovation doesn't come just from giving people incentives, it comes from creating environments where their ideas can connect." Innovation ecosystem provides such an environment in which people, businesses, and institutions can exchange information and technology and interact among themselves to transform an idea into a method, thing, or service that can be bought or sold. So building on my premise, dear panelists, could you elaborate on your country's experience with the innovation ecosystem, the governmental initiatives, and the role of different stakeholders in the aforementioned ecosystem? How would you describe the cooperation between different stakeholders that make up the innovation ecosystem in your respective countries? And I would welcome Mr. Dubini to start us off.
Thank you, Dorothea, for the kind introduction. I will briefly try to describe a little bit the innovation situation in the country where I am based, which is Italy. Despite having started, so to say, the first example of patent system in the Republic of Venice a few years ago, let's say now Italy has fallen a little behind other countries in terms of innovation, like, for example, Germany or the United States. Some of the problems probably might be connected to strong bureaucracy in some cases. In fact, if you think about it, in the university, we still are dealing with the experiment started in 2001 of the professor's privilege, which might end next year, but still is unclear, and it might be, so to say, slowing down the process of innovation. On the other hand, the next step of innovation activities in the country are very much connected to the Recovery and Resilience Plan that was presented in cooperation with the European Commission last year, that should enhance digitalization, innovation, competitiveness of companies within the country, and that has ensured a injection of capitals of around 50 billion euros that should move, let's say, or at least give a wake to the innovation system, provided that the public environment and the bureaucracy can really support it. There is much work to do under this point of view. Perhaps we are still a step behind other major European powerhouses of innovation, but of course the hope and the aim to the horizon is that we are going to have the chance to make a lot of steps forward in cooperation with the European environment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sweeney?
Yes, hello. Hope you can hear me. You froze for a minute there. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Michele was being a bit modest about Italy having a patent system a few years ago. I think it was the Republic of Venice in about 1494 who introduced the first law. So, IP rights have been around for a long time. Introduced, as I said, because states wanted to stimulate innovation. So I'm saying that there are many components to innovation ecosystems, and every country has the same components, but perhaps they're more or less developed in each different territory. In the UK, there's introduced a number of schemes over the years. Starting in a long time ago, 1948, the foundation of the National Research Development Corporation, which was essentially the government's technology transfer arm, which managed the IP of the government-funded research. And the National Enterprise Board a bit later, which was the government's venture capital arm, and a whole range of other initiatives since then. At the moment, it's making finance available to support innovation amongst SMEs through the innovation agency called Innovate UK. Skills, I think, someone heard the importance of young people and changing culture, which is still ongoing. Various schemes were introduced in business schools to support entrepreneurial management, innovation management, and although those schemes have finished, what they started still continues in many universities. Business schools now include IP awareness, and many science and technology courses also include IP awareness and business aspects. And of course, for catching them young, we still have the Young Enterprise Scheme. I think you asked about one of the most successful schemes, which you may know of, is the Knowledge Transfer Partnerships, which bring together companies and researchers, where the researcher is employed by the company, supported by government funding, and the research work is done in the university, supervised by a competent researcher, and that brings the two parties together. But I still think the three pressure points that need to be addressed, and they've needed to be addressed for a long, long time, is first of all the necessary skills, the skills in IP strategy, the skills in innovation management, IP management, and always and culture, of course, and then always the availability of finance. There's never enough. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Professor Györkös, any follow-up? So could you explain what's the situation in Slovenia?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm going back now to your initial question, but rather than describing the actual cooperation of different stakeholders, for the case of Slovenia and the University of Maribor, I would like to accent two important aspects that contribute to our country's innovation ecosystem. So the first aspect is legal. In 2021, Slovenia adopted an act on scientific research and innovation activities. For the first time, research and innovation are also, from the legal aspect, under the same roof, under the same umbrella. It brings new, more integrative and innovation ecosystem friendly approach to the funding. Earlier, these two areas were weakly related with their agencies, and now shortly they will be replaced by a joint R&I funding agency. That's the first aspect, the legal. The second aspect I would like to stress in this introduction is the European University ATHENA. Its full name is the Advanced Technology Higher Education Network Alliance. ATHENA is one of the 40 and some European universities according to the policy of the EU. So University of Maribor is one of the full members. The other members are HMU, the Hellenic Mediterranean University, IPP from Porto, University of Orléans, University Marie Curie, Lublin, NCU Rome, Carinthia University just joined us, Vilnius Technology University, University of Siegen, and University of Vigo. I hope that I didn't lost any of the alliance members. Between others with us in the audience are also the Secretary General Kostas Petridisiana and Ilka Kurek, I saw, and Rafael is also from IPP. So let me go back to ATHENA. I will leave the link to ATHENA in the chat. Within ATHENA specifically, we at the University of Maribor are taking care about Work Package 4 on research, and jointly with other alliance partners, we are also contributing to VP6 innovation, which is chaired by University of Siegen. So I think that the role of University of Maribor TTO office in VP6, who is organizing today's event, is very important. Thank you. That's for beginning.
Thank you. Ms. Vilma Puriene, any follow-up?
Yes, thank you. So Lithuania is still considered as a moderate country in European Union, but we really did a huge progress but after we became a European Union member state. So the main strategies and the priorities the government sets for innovation and research and development areas, and we as the whole Europe also set the digital and Green Deal related priorities in our state governmental strategy for innovation. We as university also following these priorities set by the state. And in Lithuania, we now doing this collaboration activities mission-based collaboration, uniting and developing the innovation ecosystems that would work for beneficial of the economy, society, in digital and green economy activities. And these missions, they are based on Green Deal and digital activities, uniting industry, research. Industry, research, innovation, infrastructure related actors, and also with a possible impact on the society and on the state economy. So this is the major activities and initiatives that are related to the innovation system and policy in the government for this period.
Okay, thank you. Miss Penelope Couture, could you explain what's the situation in France?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction to the event. In France, there are several actors to support innovation. France has been promoting innovation for a number of years with various initiatives. The main initiative is the French Tech. The French Tech is a governmental device with the French Tech missions, which has several applications, as create a networking of innovation partners to which the French Institute belongs from the beginning, create a network of 30 French tech capitals and 45 communities in France and 63 abroad in order to promote the innovation too. And they create a financial support for innovators or innovative companies and propose support program as French Tech Tremplin. Also in France, there is a specific status for students named étudiant entrepreneur. It's a program that allows students to continue their study while being accompanied in the creation of their company. France has also put in place financial support, financial mechanism, including the latest France 2030, in order to invest in innovative technology and support the ecological transition. These devices involve other institutions besides intellectual property. And now, if I can speak about IP and innovation, another example of the cooperation between actors is the INPI contribution to the work of the French presidency of the European Union in 2022. This work was enabled two major texts to be advanced on one relating to geographical indication in order to protect the know-how, and the other to design. It was also at this time that INPI co-organized a conference dedicated to intellectual property with the Centre d'études internationales de la propriété intellectuelle, which is the main university about intellectual property in France. The Compagnie nationale des conseils en propriété industrielle, which is the network of IP experts, and the Association française des spécialistes en propriété industrielle, which is the network of IP specialists in firms. So, as we can see, in France, there is a wide network of players who contribute to innovation, institutional players who implement public policies and or provide specific expertise, such as INPI, which offers support to innovators, but also private initiatives with actors who offer financing or support program from creation to growth of innovating companies. So in France, cooperative between actors appear to be organized, even more so at the level of department or region in the France. Each one is a prescriber of the other in order to meet all the needs of innovative companies. And if I can add, the last example is the connecting by the University of Maribor, who is a member of the ATHENA network, and the connecting of INPI with you.
Okay, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Rafael Pedrosa, what's the situation in Portugal?
Thank you. Good morning to everyone, and thank you, Dorothea, for the kind presentation. So regarding the Portuguese innovation ecosystem, I would like to mention that I believe that the Portuguese innovation ecosystem is now mature. There are clearly some aspects that can and should be improved, as in any process, but at the moment the instruments and stakeholders of the Portuguese innovation system respond to the most part of projects that arise. For instance, we have some programs aimed to creating and developing innovation networks, such as testbeds and the innovation digital hub. At the same time, we also have some incentives focused on accelerate and intensify the dynamics of collaboration between the various innovation agents by providing them with material and financial resources. I'm thinking, for example, in the collaborative laboratories and competitiveness clusters. In these last examples, we can find a set of entities that within their scope of action, they impact the ecosystem. And I'm talking about entities of the scientific and technological system, companies, government authorities, local government entities. I mean, all those vectors that are established in various helixes, which we theorize about the innovation economy. In all these agents, I notice, firstly, a great awareness of their role. Secondly, a great openness to the collaboration. However, as we all know, these two assumptions are often not enough, which means that we are often faced with obstacles of a legal, organizational, financial nature, among others. For instance, because the constant challenge that exists in aligning the execution periods of projects between public entities and companies, the restriction of human resources contracted to manage monetary funds, which origin frequent delays in the execution of this project. Anyway, we are faced with several obstacles, of course, but I think that the ambience we live in is one of mission and some proactivity. Thank you.
Thank you. So following up to our opening question, Professor Gerges, the University of Maribor is developing a platform, Innovum, that will contribute significantly to the development of the innovation ecosystem in Slovenia, with IP as one of the foundations on which this is going to be built. In your opinion, how will Innovum boost the innovation index in the region and consequently accelerate economic growth in general?
Thank you, Dorothea. Quite a tough question. First about the Innovum platform. This Innovum platform at the University of Maribor is a really outstanding concept that follows similar initiatives across Europe and the world, of course. With Innovum platform, University of Maribor is responding to the fragmentation of innovation potentials, and it contributes to the optimal use of available funding resources. However, there is also a goal to increase the position of Slovenia at the European Innovation Scoreboard and to beat the constant dwelling between the strong and moderate innovators in Europe. So regarding the Innovum, let me quote the Vice Rector for Infrastructure at the University of Maribor, Miralem Hadžiselimović. He says, in particular, small and medium-sized enterprises flag the development departments, personnel, and research infrastructure to achieve the development of their products, processes, and services. With Innovum platform, we aim to provide infrastructure on one hand and to offer capable staff on the other, as University of Maribor has approximately 1,200 researchers who can bring added value to research and development activities for the needs of the economy in all breakthrough fields. So that's the end of the quote of our colleague Hadžiselimović. So mentioning just one of the flagships of Innovum, which is a work in progress, of course. Let me stress the HPC Vega supercomputer within the University of Maribor infrastructure. Vega is really highly addressing the fields of artificial intelligence and digitalization, which are the flagships of EU now, we all know. So other projects and infrastructures within Innovum follow shortly. Within the University of Maribor, it is important to highlight the role of TTO again, and its capabilities and experience in the field of intellectual property related also to the concept of Innovum. And nevertheless, the Innovum perfectly fits into the concept of ATHENA I presented earlier, the European University. We are right now within the ATHENA just building the cluster of open and shared infrastructures that opens a new perspective for the ATHENA Alliance and makes it competitive, not just the members, but all the companies and innovators they are collaborating with. So in this second part of my intervention, I in some way followed the call of Vice Rector Dan Koroshak at the beginning of this section. So I would like to also to address the field of intellectual property in context of open science. In my career, personally, I had a great opportunity to work in the capacity of Science Europe Governing Board member, and in 2017, we, with other research funders and partners worldwide, initiated activities to open the access to scientific publications. However, it followed similar initiatives like Berlin Declaration, and it contributed, we hope so, to break or at least modify some of the very stiff rules of the scientific publishing world, including the area of intellectual property of the research papers. So indeed, so let me conclude this part. Open science is broader term, of course, including much more than open access. And that's why I would like, in context of today's event, to point out report of a study that was published in 2022, so a year ago, by Publication Office of the European Union. I already shared the link to this document with you. The title is Open Science and Intellectual Property Rights. How can they better interact? The state of the art is described, and reflections are given by two authors, La Cueva and Menendez. It is a highly recommended reading for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, I would like to point my question to Ms. Vilma Puriene. So you're the director of the Knowledge and Technology Transfer Center at Vilnius Tech, having started the office from scratch in 2014. As we know, technology transfer offices are an integral part of the innovation ecosystem, since they act as intermediaries between academia and the business sector. What has been your journey so far in developing your TTO and establishing contact with researchers at Vilnius Tech? So I would like to hear your thoughts and your story.
Thank you. It wasn't easy task as to develop and to found the TTO office at the university. So we started in 2014 when the government set the goal for the university to have the knowledge and technology transfer centers and to start these technology transfer activities at the universities. It became the national goal, priority somehow to employ the research results that have been created at the universities. So we started with the vision to become a one-stop shop for the researchers, for academics, also for the students, and for the industry and other community and society that a university is taking part in this ecosystem. So we just wanted to help academics and researchers to facilitate their collaboration with the business, how they can employ their knowledge transfer to the market. Also, we wanted to help innovators startups and entrepreneurs also to get knowledge and capacities and solutions that can be developed from the idea to the new business opportunities, and of course to become a engagement and transfer of collaboration among the stakeholder specific activities, solutions, services, among other external activities and infrastructure that we can also be part of. So like we are not doing now, we've started with the internal marketing for the researchers, for the community, for the students, on our activities, on our facilitation services that we can help facilitate all the process from the idea, from the research solution, taking all the administrative burden and things that researcher would only take care on the content, on the research, and the rest of the documents, agreements, all the negotiations and something would be on us, and we would take the responsibility and to give the high quality services for the business, and of course that researcher also would be happy on this. We also took a proactive role in collaboration with the local municipalities and cities, promoting our research opportunities and solutions, how they can implement via pre-commercial procurements, innovation procurements, and we started lobbying our solutions, and this was also our one of the channels and tools how we helped our researchers to employ their ideas and research solutions for the benefit of the cities, of the city societies and communities. We used our research tools like gamification things, so that we could get the, for example, get the feedback from the community while organizing and developing urban things for city development and making something better for this. So it just we started to build the innovation community that university is taking part, and we wanted to be the orchestrators of the whole activities that are related with the business and science collaboration, and integrating this in the system, in the whole university system, how this service can be, how to say, important in the life of the university, and also in the priorities and activities of the third mission that university is taking part. And being in European universities, as for example in ATHENA, help us also to learn and to gain other knowledge and experiences from other universities, to see how it's been doing in other universities, and take something and to adjust it into our activities. So so this is, I think, the most important thing.
Yeah, thank you for giving us insight into the story of how your TTO started, and why is it also an important part of the innovation ecosystem. Ms. Penelope Couture, you're working at as a regional delegate at the French Institute for Intellectual Property, so another institute that is very important in the innovation ecosystem as a whole. So your office provides information about patents, trademarks, designs, and other forms of IP. So in your opinion, do businesses, universities, R&D institutions, startup communities, etc., know how best to utilize IP in their ventures, be it business or R&D projects? Do they know how to valorize, for example, patent information properly? So what do you think? What is the awareness level among different stakeholders regarding this topic?
In my opinion, I think IP awareness differs between stakeholders. For a corporate point of view, generally speaking, large groups have a well-developed IP strategy corresponding to their corporate strategy. I think it's because they have the resources to adopt a strategic approach to preserving their competitive advantage through IP. This can be seen in the annual list of French patent applicants published by the INPI. Among the top 50 applicants, we can find many large companies alongside only 12 public research organizations. On the other side, for startup and small and medium enterprise, the subject is not treated with the same importance or with the same objectives. Companies are generally more aware of the importance of patents, only because investors focus on this protection. The patent is perceived as a communication and as an insurance tool. They therefore find most of the time without really having a strategy as such. This is the difficulty, particularly in managing the budgets and the defense and then the valuation of this tangible asset. They also seem to disregard the other aspect of IP, the complementary of each of the IP rights on the same projects. For example, they quite often forget that they also have a know-how that can be valued as intangible assets. Also, there are certain obstacles to be removed, such as the non-patentability of software, whereas in reality, a process implemented by the same software potentially becomes patentable, or IP is expensive. Here, we have to think about the return on investment, which is not easy for a startup or a small company with few financial resources. Also, many do not measure the IP issues in their relations with their employee or even in their partnerships relations. This is why the INP offer tailor-made support to this innovative company in order to help them think about their IP strategy and business model through various measures, such as a prognosis, financial support, and training and coaching. As regards research organization, intellectual property is a real issue. These organizations are notably valued on the basis of the number of patents filed. However, there are only 15 research and higher education institutions and state institutions in France in the top 50 of this patent publication. This issue is not so much the number of patent applications, but rather their exploitation, particularly via technology transfer or public-private partnerships. On this last subject, companies do not yet systematically turn to public laboratories to carry out R&D or consider technology transfers. Also, on the researcher side, the links between research results and the business model are not yet systematic. So there are also obstacles to be removed in the field of the public research to make IP a real tool for enhancing innovation. If I come to your second question, enhancing patent information, for example, I would say that patent information, I think, is underestimated. Here again, it's primarily a question of financial and human resource allocated to the company itself. In innovation process, a developed company will be able to invest in software, allowing the exploitation of patent information, or even dedicate a person to the interpretation or have easy recourses to an IP expert. Conversely, in a small structure where human and financial resources are limited, this possibility seems reduced. Now, on the valuation aspect as such, startups and small companies really heavily on patents to attract investors. However, they sometimes forget that filing for the sake of filing doesn't necessarily help. It is necessary to convince people of the strategy adopted and also to look for the complementary of IP rights on one innovation. This is why I think it is important to raise awareness of IP issue as early as possible in a company at all levels, geological, researcher, engineer, This is one of the reasons why the INPI has been continuously thinking about improving the support it offers, and particularly through adopted mechanisms, testimony of good practice and teaching, and also recognition events such as the trophy, the annual trophy.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, our situation in Slovenia is quite similar. So we still have a long way to raise awareness among different stakeholders and to overcome certain obstacles that are in the way of IP protection and getting the message across to different stakeholders on why is it important to protect it properly. This is why I would ask Mr. Sweeney, your background is in engineering primarily, and you have a lot of experience in managing and commercializing research and new technologies. So you think innovators, for example, in the UK in general, are aware of the importance of the role of IP as the driver for growth and competitiveness in business? So do they know how to use this shield and strategy of implementing IP protection properly? So what has been your experience so far? I think you have the mic.
Sorry, yeah, muted. Yeah, I don't think they're there yet. There's still a long way to go. But as a result of all the different initiatives we've been hearing around, we're making slow progress. And I think there are a number of things that are helping with that. Of course, the various initiatives to help people think about IP strategy. Things in Europe, for example, like the Horizon IP Scan, specifically designed to help SMEs devise appropriate strategies for the IP, and similar schemes, as Penelope mentioned, in France and around Europe, to do IP audits and help companies think about strategy. At the researcher level, again, I think awareness of the importance is increasing, partly as a result of the requirement of funders to address strategies for IP management, protection and exploitation. That's a requirement now in European funding. The problem is that most researchers don't understand what this is about. So it's addressed, and the IP Helpdesk provides some help with that. But I think there's still a wariness about IP. The word, I think, is a little bit scary to some. And I think that's a result of misunderstandings about what it is. Researchers, for example, I think see it as in conflict with the requirements for open science incorrectly. Joseph mentioned there are a couple of things in chat there, the document about open science and IP. And the one I put in there is just been published by ASTP, which is an association of tech transfer offices, which you're probably aware of or members of. And that, again, is specifically targeted to try and help them explain that they don't have to disclose everything, which is, of course, is a bit of an issue with technical inventions which might be patented. So there's an awareness issue there. There's also this issue mentioned again about software. There's a perception that and there's a confusion that open science also means open source, which it isn't. And there's also a misunderstanding about the patenting and protection of computer implemented invention software. Again, because the patent convention says you can't patent software, but what it means is you can't patent software code, which is protected by copyright. So there are a number of misunderstandings there. So I think the key issue here for researchers is to, and for tech transfer offices really, is to try and raise awareness of what IP is really about. It's actually researchers are the people producing this. They're a bit like gold diggers. Expect people to go and find some nuggets of gold, and not for them to become patent lawyers, but to tell them what the issues are if they have a technical invention, and the fact that they need to keep good records, good research practice. And if they do find a shiny object in the ground, they shouldn't just throw it away and give it to everyone. They should go to the tech transfer office first so that an expert can look at it. That's not to say they have to be experts in IP or become IP lawyers. You know, any training is not about that. It's about teaching them about the awareness of certain things. For example, publications, obviously the patent versus publishing thing, the novelty aspects of patents, but there's also the aspect of obviousness, which patents are often challenged by the way papers are written. Because to be obvious, it has to be not obvious to someone skilled in the art, not follow logically. And researchers tend to write papers in a logical way. They say Smith and Jones did that, therefore we tried to do this, and we were successful. Well, it doesn't sound inventive. So there's a bit of researcher education that needs to go on. And as far as companies, it's again avoiding this word cost. You know, IP protection is not a cost, it's an investment. And you invest in this, and you consider the investment in the same way as you'd invest in sales, marketing, going to a conference or whatever. So I think that's the culture message that you need to give. So we still got a way to go, and there are still some challenges, but I think you just have to press on. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. I think a mind shift is really necessary in viewing IP differently than it is viewed today. And of course, events like today's can help demystify some wrong perceptions on IP among different stakeholders, and I hope we will get the message across. Well, so it all starts with education, of course. So yes, Mr. Pedrosa, you're coordinating Startup Porta, which aims to foster emergence and development of a new generation of business by promoting entrepreneurship programs, not only for Porto ecosystem, but for the entire country. So in your opinion, is IP and all related issues incorporated enough in the entrepreneurship programs? What is the awareness level on the subject of IP and its correlation for creating revenue among aspiring entrepreneurs in Portugal? So how is this? Is it already incorporated in the school system or not? So I would like to hear your thoughts.
Yes. Okay. So I would say that a reasonable percentage of those involved in the entrepreneurial process are aware of the importance of IP in the relevance that this area has in innovation, and consequently in their own entrepreneurial initiative. However, here in startup, we work with two different realities, and for that reason must be analyzed, in my opinion, in parallel too. We have entrepreneurial initiatives from the scientific and technological system, and other ones from the civil society. In first case, the value proposition has almost necessarily to be based on technology, which is closely related, as we know, to the patent, utility models, design, and so on. And in second case, the value proposition may include other elements that are not directly related with to the IP right. So due to this reality, we can see that the entrepreneurship programs that are developed in a scientific and technological environment always take these issues into account, often with a weight considered adequate for the reality of the projects that participate in these programs, in my opinion. In the case of programs that are organized outside the scientific and technological system, this concern decreases a little bit, which means that in some cases, the hours dedicated to the topic are few or non-existent at all. Regarding to the second part of your question, and considering the two mentioned realities, I am of the opinion that in first group, the vast majority of future entrepreneurs are aware of the importance of protection and understand the impact that this can have on the back exploitation of its product with the consequent commercial performance, even that a minority, and this is my opinion, don't know exactly how this happened. They know that the IP rights are important. They heard about that, but they don't really know how this works. In second group, the same situation is no longer verified, in my opinion. That is, globally speaking, there are a notion that it could be important. However, the direct impact on the project is not understood by the majority. And in my opinion, this happens because IP rights here in Portugal, at least, are generally associated with patents and design. That is related to the innovations with a technological nature and not so much with the distinctive trade signs such as brands, logos, etc. Since in these businesses the value proposal is based with some frequency precisely on the communication and image of the project, my opinion is that there should be an effort in the sense that social literacy on this subject become greater in order to enhance the creation of value in business initiatives that also arise outside the centers of scientific and technological innovation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. As always, education is key, also in the terms related to the IP. So I'm very happy that we have a lot of students here present today, because I think it starts with a young age to raise awareness on this topic as well. And why is it so important? Because now I would like to ask our two lawyers to help us explain why is it important to protect IP from a legal aspect. So what repercussions could there be if IP is not protected properly? So I would first address my question to Ms. Nina Smirnu. So you're practicing law in the field of intellectual property, and in TTO we often see that IP is seen as a reactive R&D support function for filing patents, managing renewal fees, and ensuring competitors don't infringe IPs, or as a business support function to identify new technologies and partners. So it's mostly seen as a administrative part, just an administrative nuisance. So how can we accelerate the mind shift in which filing patents and trademarks and other forms of IP is not just seen as an administrative activity that gets in the way of innovation, but is a strategic asset, as Mr. Sweeney said, that can even be monetized?
Yes, hi everybody. Me and Dorothea are sitting in the same room, so there's a bit of echo on my side. First, it's a great honor to be in your company and actually celebrate our professional holiday with this excellent discussion. Now, Dr. Sweeney's great keynote speech and his message just before already gave us a lot of useful pointers that we can and should use in changing a rather reserved mindset about the intellectual property rights. So maybe just to add on to those and where we working in a technology transfer office can help and actually already deliver. Well, of course, regular and frequent education to clear out misunderstandings and misperceptions, awareness raising targeted at creating realistic and perhaps more time-framed expectations about IP commercialization that can also be included as milestones in the strategic planning. And of course, attractive funding opportunities would be those first steps in tackling the problem and accelerating the mindset shift. Now, talking about the technology transfer offices as such themselves, there needs to be a clear understanding of the role, importance, and added value of a TTO. Researchers on one hand and university lead on the other must assist the TTO in putting it onto the innovation ecosystem map, making the office more visible and emphasizing its role as a consultancy and advisory point rather than just an administration or postal counter for patent applications. Because only through cooperation and unified understanding of all our positions within the ecosystem, as well as considering the fact that we are actually all looking in the same direction, not standing on opposite sides, can we accelerate the innovation activity and consequently the innovation index, starting at the micro level and up to the national and beyond. Thank you for now.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Nina, for giving us feedback on this topic. So I would kindly ask Mr. Michele Dubini, you're also experienced in the field of IP. Could you explain what are some of the legal pitfalls when it comes to protecting IP that the stakeholders of the innovation system are not maybe aware of? So what are some of the legal repercussions that they might face when IP is not protected properly?
Yes, so I think we pointed in the previous speeches that the main source of these problems, legal problems, is very often the lack of awareness or the misconceptions of some topics regarding intellectual property and intellectual property rights. From my experience within Horizon Europe, Horizon 2020, FP7 programs, and I've seen companies and I've seen researchers, and I think Penelope has said some very important things before. There are often common mistake made either by companies or by researchers that prevent very often the possibility of cashing in on that economical advantage in the market that intellectual property rights would guarantee if the whole process would follow an informed and strategic and build consequently process. That unfortunately does not happen, and the main mistakes that we have seen, for example, for companies are connected to novelty, unfortunately. If a company, for example, inside a project would like to exploit the results like it has promised in the description of the action, for example, and in the project, it's of course a lot has a big advantage if there is a intellectual property right grounding this potential exploitation. Well, very often it happens that either the company itself, because of lack of knowledge or unawareness, or some other party within the consortium publishes some documents, and that means that novelty is of course not there anymore, and there is no patent on the invention or the results that has been generated. This of course might be a major problems. We've seen also especially these events happening in, for example, MSCA project, where academia world and companies come in very close contact and need to cooperate as efficiently as possible. And unfortunately, sometimes this does not happen. But we have also seen it within, for example, the European IP Helpdesk mistakes by, for example, researchers or also company as well that misunderstand the concept of intellectual property per se. For example, researchers who received a cease and desist letter by, for example, very important company, and came to us horrified and asked, how is that even possible? I have a patent in my hands. This means I can actually access a certain market, because the state said that what I have in my hands is new and it is inventive. And so how is it possible that a third party is coming now to me and saying that what I am doing was already discovered by them? This is definitely impossible. So if we think about it this way, it might be hard to understand the doubt, of course, from our knowledge, this doubt from the company. But then again, coming back to their situation, we need to explain and, let's say, get to the same level in order to raise the knowledge to avoid that such mistakes are made. Such mistakes can be very costly. A cease and desist letter is never a good news, so to say, and of course it hinders the whole process of exploitation and the whole process of innovation as well, because you need then to take care of legal problems, and you cannot do other things that otherwise you would be doing. So sometimes repercussions are hard, and again, all these problems, also the legal, unfold, at least in my opinion, but for what I have been hearing, also in the opinion of my colleagues before, from lack of knowledge or misknowledge of the intellectual property system.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Michele, for your insight into the topic and for providing us with legal aspect of this topic, which is highly important, as we seen. So lastly, I would just like to wrap this discussion. In your opinion, and this is again addressed to all our panelists, how will innovation ecosystem develop in the future? So what will be the role of IP in the innovation system in the future with ChatGPT and all other forms that are emerging? So how do you think this will evolve in the future? So maybe we can start with Dr. Sweeney, of course.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, it's going to continue to have a key role. It has done for hundreds of years, so I don't see any reason why it shouldn't continue. And I think hopefully, the awareness raising will improve things. Again, when you're talking to researchers, you need to, as I say, make them aware of things. One thing which helps quite a lot is to share the university's revenue sharing policy with them. So if they know they're going to benefit, then that also helps them maybe think a little bit more about it. But again, I think hopefully all the activities are there to start thinking about IP as a strategic tool to help businesses and to raise awareness among the creators of the IP, not to do anything that's going to cause the value of the IP to disappear. And I've got several scare stories here of where potentially valuable pieces of IP have been lost. Just a very quick example, a university I was visiting gave me a potential therapy for a form of cancer, which I took back to our cancer oncology expert, who said, yeah, this looks very interesting, let's do some due diligence, and immediately came up with a disclosure made by the research student who was publicizing their internal seminar, which was publicly available. Therefore, we said, sorry, you know, there's no way a drug company will take this on if it's not protected. And the reason it was disclosed was not, they were just publicizing, it was just not deliberate, it was just lack of awareness of issues like that. So there is a lot of IP value leakage going on that, you know, can be addressed. But the other thing is on, just a minute, I mentioned the ISO 56000 series of standards on intellectual asset management. Innovation management systems, which includes a number of different standards in the series, including IP management, strategic partnership management tools and methods, and so on. That's been published over the last couple of years as guidance standards, and it's a great source of best practice, but it's also now being developed as a requirement standard. So as people sign up to ISO 9000, for example, quality management, there'll be an opportunity to be certified as an innovation manager, and this applies right across the board. So I think something like that, and there's a lot of interest in it, that will maybe help professionalize both the procedures and the innovation profession. So I think there are things happening and might lead to a better focused management for those involved in different parts of the chain. But I think it all starts really at the beginning, where you know, the creators need to be aware that they capture the IP and they give it to someone who can assess it and treat it before they go publishing it. And just a quick word. I know when you mentioned it, just to make it clear, it's open access to publications, okay? And it's the publications that are open access, and those publications may describe technologies and methods and research results which are protected already by patents or copyright or anything else. So yeah, I think we're still a way to go, but we're getting there slowly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Rafael, any follow-up? So what will the future of IP be in the innovations ecosystem?
Yes, so for me, and as far as I can observe here in Portugal, I believe that there will be a natural intensification of the collaboration strategies between all the different agents of this ecosystem in order to increase the good practices conducted to applied research. In this sense, I see a gradual invasion of the research spaces by business agents, by PhDs or any other actions of research, and of the business space by scientific agents. I also absolutely believe in the emergence of more and more spaces and moments of intersection between scientific and technological reality and business reality. So projects such as the collaborative laboratories and competitiveness clusters will have more and more importance in this table. So due to the role of IP in the entrepreneurial ecosystems, I understand it in a dual optic perspective, if I can say that. On the one hand, the role in the development of science, both based on fundamental scientific research and applied research aimed at creating an offer of value for the developed product service, of course. And on the other hand, as an instrument that enhances good governance and rigor in business planning and management, insofar as we are aware, much of the research that is carried out in companies is funded by programs. As we know, these programs in the selection and evaluation criteria severally penalize projects from companies that do not have good operating results and a good track record of execution. So I know naturally that this position is not free from controversy, since the managed entities themselves are often the main causes of non-execution of projects due to delays in their interactions. But in my opinion, the underlying principle is virtuous. So in a way, I believe that it could be well implemented in all this process, and it could have a good and it could be a good head to all this ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. Miss Vilma Purena, any last thoughts?
Okay, thank you. In my opinion, and in the reality, as the years go by, I think we see that innovation are increasing. In France, we are no longer just talking about technological innovation now. All types of innovation are taken into account in the evolution of our French companies. It doesn't matter how innovative is it, as long as there is a response to a need and now also a response to ecological issues. In France, for example, we are hearing more and more about innovation turned toward ecology, the circular transition, and also the agriculture of tomorrow. So I think that the state supports this initiative through various calls for thematic projects in line with the major European challenges for the international company. For the role of IP, I think that the role of IP in the future was in France, the role of IP in the future was the theme of the 27th Intellectual Property Forum in Paris in March. The subject of IP is at the heart of legislative discussion, including to combat counterfeiting, which is a main point to in intellectual property strategy. The other avenue mentioned is also that of raising awareness of intellectual property via an educational and playful approach in order to convince people of its value and to remind the perception of IP. For example, if I can, the changes to come with a unitary patent will impact on the IP strategy of company and therefore on innovation. In this sense, we have seen it in France because in 2020 there is some legislative changes, and these changes in assessment of condition of validity of patent application transforms the IP strategy. So also, I think we are currently seeing that all new innovation as artificial intelligence or 3D, but also new form of communication bring IP into play. There is no doubt that I think there is no doubt that IP will be at the heart of future innovation, both to preserve competitive advantage and to preserve everyone's rights. I think that IP must be seen as a tool for innovation and business strategy, and not only as an administrative act.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Miss Vilma from Vilnius Tech. Any last thoughts?
Thank you. So I agree with the other representatives that the IP will continue continue to play the key role in innovation and in business and science collaboration. This is really the key issue and key challenge, how to employ the created research results and solutions that have been created at the university by the researchers. And I think the IP also will help, will be the main tool for innovation ecosystems to bring people together from different backgrounds with the common purpose of innovation and collaboration. And these innovation ecosystems will also facilitate the path for the entrepreneurs, for team leads, organizations to create their own innovation ecosystem to make innovation happen. And our state government also developed some also support measures for the startups to create, to facilitate and to support the startup development and the business growth based on the IP and the patents and the design and everything. So I think together in collaboration within the ecosystem based on the IP, and IP employment will bring innovation into the market and will be adapted, and it will bring the value and bring people together, but also it will also will have the transformational mission for the countries to work together on better well-being of the country.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Michele Dubini, your thoughts on the topic?
Yes, thank you. Well, I think now we talk about a little bit national point of view of the different countries. I think it's also important to see the picture from the European point of view, and I think the European Commission has been in its input quite clear on how or where it would like to arrive until 2026, until Horizon Europe is going to be over, to have an innovation that actually really looks more like what Eugene Sweeney has been telling us in his presentation. So the actual use of the results, which then turns out into a actual feel of the investment in the benefits for the societal infrastructure, for the economical tissue of the European Union, and so that we have, let's say, also a innovation environment and stakeholders and pieces of the chain that work really towards a use of the project results, and that then creates an actual impact of the different country of the European Union. So I think this will be the way, perhaps a little bit more similar to technology transfer, to transfer institutions like that operate like more or less companies in the United States, and so to create really a value from the money that is spent in the research. I think this is going to be the first and foremost challenge for the European Union until 2026.
Okay. Thank you. Professor Gerkes, any thoughts?
Thank you. So let me be more general for the end of this great session. So I think we, the humanity, are always in extremes regarding the innovations. We are quite skeptical about future technologies and their societal innovation. But on the other hand, in some way, we aspire and fantasize of them, of these innovations. And the visionaries, we have quite many of them in these days, are often exposed as naive futurists until something earlier or unforeseeable becomes a new normality. And you mentioned ChatGPT. In the terms of knowledge and technologies, these novelties mostly bring something that is breakthrough, and it has strong influence on the society. And most important for today's discussion, it brings new opportunities for businesses and everyday life. So to cope with all these challenges, in my opinion, a really sound education, research, and innovation ecosystem is needed. And the IP, intellectual property, plays an important galvanizing role in it, as I understand and according to my experience. So at the end, I would like to express my sincere thanks to organize this event within the scope of ATHENA European University. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Nina, your last thoughts.
Thank you. Yeah, but the innovation ecosystem is concerned, well, ideally, the network of the stakeholders will become greater, tighter, and will produce more synergies, and with that boost the innovation activity of all involved. Taking Innovam as an example that was presented before by Professor Görkös, creating a somewhat innovation holding should lead, as we can learn from many examples in the economy, to greater efficiency, profitability, and visibility of the results. Now turning to the role of IP, in my opinion, also the basic role of IP will not really change. However, and as it has always been, regulation is at least 1 or 2 steps behind what becomes an obstacle when the technology is progressing as fast as we have been facing the last years. And together with that, society changing in many aspects. New players, of which the most important one must be AI, as we agree, have entered the field. New uses eventually shaped a new digital market, are today an everyday practice. And although there's still many open questions, starting from personal data and privacy protection, copyright, and so on. Now, for the sake of legal certainty, it is not possible nor accurate to regulate every hypothetical subject field, right? But what we as a society and practitioners active in the innovation ecosystem can do is to look at the basic principles, shake and realign them with nowadays circumstances, deliver our messages to all kinds of platforms, associations, and most importantly, policy and lawmakers. And perhaps it will be easier and faster to build upon that. Thank you.
Thank you for your last thoughts. So now we have reached the end of the event. Should any of the participants have any questions, now is the time to raise them. Feel free to use the chat or raise the hand. And yeah, if you have any questions for our panelists or keynote speakers, please do so. You're kindly invited. Don't be shy. Okay, so if there are no questions, which is usually the case in those events, I would kindly ask Dr. Tina Meseric, the head of the TTO office at our university, to close this event. Yeah, Tina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dorothea. So dear guests, dear participants, thank you.
Tina, you're muted.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry, you're not. Sorry.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So dear guests, dear participants, thank you for joining us today at this event to celebrate World IP Day 2023. As we heard from today's speeches and discussions, IP plays an important role in the innovation system, and evidence suggests that intellectual property protection is an important factor in determining economic growth, corporate competitiveness, and global innovation. So the idea was highlighted many times during today's discussion in order to different stakeholders that make up an innovation system to be aware of the fact that awareness of this particular topic is crucial. So I really hope today's event has given us a lot of food for thoughts, and will spur future debate on this topic in the future. So thank you again. And now I'm giving the floor back to Dorothea to close the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. I think Professor Gürkes, you've raised your hand. Do you want to say something?
Oh, it was by mistake. Sorry. I just like to do the thumb up. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Gürkes.
Yeah. So without further ado, thank you all for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. And yes, happy IP Day. I hope we will celebrate it even more on 26th. And yeah, see you on the next event. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a nice day.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a nice day.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Bye. Have a nice day.